Jefferson Central High had never looked more polished. Red carpet rolled out, spotlights beaming, and cameras ready to broadcast the annual National Student Achievement Awards, a televised event that celebrated the district's brightest students. Parents, teachers, and school board officials sat proudly in the massive auditorium, applauding the evening's honors. The event was known not just for the recognition, but for being broadcast live across several educational networks. Among the nervous but excited nominees stood Jada Williams, a 17-year-old black student known for her calm voice, brilliant mind, and revolutionary science project on renewable energy that had won state-level accolades. She wasn't just smart, she was extraordinary. Yet, she often felt invisible in the hallways, except to a few teachers who truly saw her. One who didn't was Miss Candace Holloway, a veteran teacher who had taught at Jefferson for over 30 years. Holloway was always professional in public, but had a history of subtle bias. She favored wealthier white students like Claire Bennett, whose family had funded several school events. It wasn't spoken, but it was known. The highlight of the night was the Platinum Eagle Award, given to the top student across the entire city. Only 3 students were finalists: Claire Bennett, Jada Williams, and another senior boy. The announcer opened the envelope. And this year's Platinum Eagle Award goes to Jada Williams. Cheers erupted. Jada stepped forward, visibly stunned. She took a deep breath, smoothed her blazer, and approached the stage. The cameras followed. But as Miss Holloway reached for the crystal plaque to hand it over, she paused. Her smile vanished. She looked at Jada, and in front of the entire nation, she did something unthinkable. And the auditorium went dead silent. Miss Holloway's hand gripped the award tighter as Jada stood there, hand extended with a hopeful smile. The cameras zoomed in. A few seconds passed. Then Miss Holloway leaned toward the mic and said with a sharp, clipped voice, "There must be a mistake. This award isn't meant for her." Gasps echoed across the auditorium. Jada's smile faded. Confusion etched across her face. "Excellence," Miss Holloway continued, "must be earned honestly, not handed out like pity." And then, in front of the blinking cameras, she raised the crystal award above her head and smashed it down onto the edge of the podium. Crack! The audience gasped in horror as the Platinum Eagle shattered into jagged pieces. Claire Bennett sat frozen in the front row, her eyes wide. Jada didn't move. Her hands remained at her side. She looked down at the shards now scattered across the floor. The broken crystal reflected the stage lights, like a promise shattered in front of thousands. Miss Holloway turned and walked off stage, leaving stunned silence in her wake. The host fumbled, trying to recover, but the damage was done. Jada slowly bent down and picked up a large piece of the broken award. Her fingers curled around it, but her expression remained calm. Not angry, not shocked, just still. Cameras captured the moment, already flooding live feeds. Backstage, the production team panicked. One whispered, "She just committed career suicide." In the front row, an older man stood quietly. He had been waiting for this ceremony for a different reason. But now he had seen enough. He walked toward the side of the stage, holding a leather case in his hand, eyes locked on Jada. He wasn't just a guest. He was about to change everything. Backstage chaos erupted as the crew scrambled to salvage the broadcast. Microphones buzzed with anxious voices, producers gesturing frantically while switching camera angles. One stagehand whispered, "Cut the feed." Another replied, "No, we're live nationwide. We can't." The director's voice crackled through headsets. "Who's the man at stage left? Is that Dr. Langston?" Dr. Elijah Langston, head of the National Scholars Federation, had arrived quietly, without fanfare. No one expected him to attend in person. He was supposed to make an announcement next week. But now, standing beside the curtain, he clutched a sealed certificate in a sleek black case, his face stone cold. He had seen everything. Miss Holloway paced in a dark hallway, unaware of the storm she had just unleashed. A fellow teacher tried to stop her, whispering, "Candace, what have you done?" "I did what was right," she snapped. "I refused to reward mediocrity." But it wasn't mediocrity she had shattered, it was greatness. On stage, Jada still stood, holding the largest shard of her broken award. Her hand trembled slightly, but her posture remained strong. She hadn't spoken a word since the moment the plaque hit the floor. And somehow, that silence was louder than any outcry. The audience remained in stunned suspense. Whispers filled the room, parents, students, teachers trying to make sense of what they just witnessed. Some reached for their phones, already typing tweets and messages. Clips of the moment were spreading like wildfire. Then, a subtle shift. Dr. Langston stepped onto the stage, bypassing the host, the protocol, and the applause. He stood beside Jada, his deep voice cutting through the stillness like a blade. "Good evening. I'm here to correct something. Not a mistake, an injustice." The room froze, and Jada finally turned toward him. Dr. Langston's presence commanded the room instantly. He wasn't tall, but he stood with gravity. The host stepped back, stunned, offering no resistance as the man took the mic. "My name is Dr. Elijah Langston. I represent the National Scholars Federation, and I came tonight to quietly observe. But after what I've just seen, I will not remain silent." He turned to Jada. "Miss Williams, you don't know me." "But we know you." Jada blinked, startled. Dr. Langston opened his black case with care and removed a sleek, gold-trimmed folder. Inside was a certificate, thicker than paper, glossy and embossed with federal seals. Jada Williams was not just nominated for the Platinum Eagle, he said firmly. She was also selected as the national recipient of the Athena Prize for Scientific Innovation. Gasps swept the room again. Jada's mouth parted slightly, her eyes blinking rapidly. "We were scheduled to present this next week, with full honors and press coverage," Dr. Langston continued. "But I believe this moment, this injustice, demands truth now." He handed the folder to Jada. Tears brimmed in her eyes, not from humiliation, but from the shock of being seen, fully, truthfully, undeniably. She scored the highest among over 15,000 applicants. "Her project is being reviewed for early-stage development grants," he added. A murmur of awe spread through the auditorium. Dr. Langston turned to the audience. Tonight, the nation saw more than talent. It saw grace under pressure, dignity under fire, strength that can't be broken, even when glass can. Jada clutched the folder, holding it tight to her chest. The cameras zoomed in again, but this time the story was hers. News didn't just spread, it exploded. Within minutes, the incident was trending under hashtags like #JusticeForJada and #TeachersNapSword. Millions watched the replay in disbelief, especially the moment when Jada stood tall and silent, while Dr. Langston delivered truth like a sword. Television anchors called it one of the most shocking and inspiring moments ever captured live. Journalists began contacting the school. Requests for interviews flooded in. But Jada didn't say much. She didn't need to. Her silence had become a movement. Meanwhile, Jefferson High's administration held an emergency meeting. Principal Marsh, clearly shaken, paced his office. "This isn't just about a mistake," he muttered. "It's a national scandal." The school board demanded an internal review. Miss Holloway had already left the building, reportedly escorted out by security for her own safety. Not due to threats, but because the community outrage was overwhelming. At home, Jada's mother wept quietly as she watched her daughter on screen. "They tried to break her," she whispered, but she rose. Students at Jefferson gathered outside, many holding up signs. "Jada is our voice." Awards break. She doesn't. By the next morning, over 20 colleges had sent personal messages to Jada, reaffirming their interest, with full scholarships. But Jada wasn't focused on the noise. She was still holding that gold-trimmed folder, sitting quietly in her room, her mind drifting, not toward revenge or anger, but toward every other student who had ever been overlooked, silenced, or dismissed. This wasn't just her moment anymore. It was bigger than her now. Miss Holloway sat alone in her kitchen, the cold glare of her laptop screen reflecting on her face. Her inbox had exploded with messages, some hateful, some demanding accountability. News stations had left voicemails. Former students were tweeting stories of past favoritism and bias. The truth was unraveling fast. She clutched a mug of cold coffee but didn't drink. Her face, once composed and proud, now looked tired, brittle and stunned. A statement had been drafted by the school district. "We do not condone the behavior of Miss Candice Holloway and are conducting a full investigation. She has been placed on immediate administrative leave." It was spreading too. She had once believed her decisions were justified, that her decades of tenure gave her authority. But now, the illusion of control had crumbled. Back at Jefferson, students whispered about her downfall. Some were angry, others simply relieved. Claire Bennett, the student Ms. Holloway had unofficially favored, posted a message publicly supporting Jada and condemning her teacher's actions. It went viral. Jada remained silent, not out of fear, but out of purpose. Because power didn't come from shouting, it came from truth. Ms. Holloway opened her social media one last time. There, pinned at the top of her feed, was the freeze frame of the moment she shattered the award. Captioned, "This is how racism looks, and how grace responds." She closed the laptop. She had made her choice that night. And now, the world had seen it. Jada stood in front of her bathroom mirror, brushing her hair back neatly. The house was quiet, the morning sun spilling across the hardwood floor. Her inbox was flooded, her phone lit up non-stop, but none of that mattered right now. Today, she would speak. Her school had invited her back to close the ceremony that had gone so horribly wrong. After initial hesitation, Jada agreed, not for herself, but for every student who sat in that auditorium, waiting to see what dignity looked like in the aftermath of injustice. She wore a navy blue blazer, not new, just her favorite. As she walked through the school hallway, students clapped. Teachers nodded in quiet apology. She stepped onto the same stage, where the podium had been cleaned, and the shattered glass long swept away. No one knew what she would say. She approached the mic and paused, looked at the crowd, looked into the camera, and said, "Some people believe breaking something takes away its value, but I'm still here, and I'm not broken." Applause swelled, real, full, and thunderous. I didn't win because of who I know. I won because of what I've done. And every student in this room, you matter too. It wasn't a speech full of anger. It was full of truth, and it echoed beyond that room. Here are chapters 8 to 14 of the story titled, "Teacher Shatters Black Girl's Award on Live TV, but Regrets It Instantly." Each chapter is exactly 300 words. Jada's short, powerful speech lit a fire far beyond the auditorium. Within hours, national news outlets began featuring her story. Clips of her calm response played across major networks. Pundits debated what her composure represented: quiet resistance, generational strength, or the emotional weight students of color carry in silence. Major news anchors called it one of the most composed responses to a public act of injustice in recent memory. But it wasn't just the media reacting. Students from other schools began recording their own videos, sharing their experiences with bias and favoritism. The hashtag #IamJada trended worldwide. A young girl from Texas wrote, "They told me I wouldn't amount to anything, but Jada reminded me that my worth isn't measured by their expectations." Jada read those posts, one by one. At first, she felt overwhelmed. Then, a sense of duty settled in her chest. This moment wasn't about her anymore. It had become a movement. Dr. Langston contacted her personally. The National Scholars Federation invited her to speak at a national education summit the following month. They wanted her to open the event. Her principal requested a formal apology to be read in front of the student body, but Jada declined. "I don't need words from someone who never saw me," she said softly. Her silence will be enough. Back home, her mother received a call from MIT's admissions office. "We just wanted to speak directly to the mother of a history maker," the voice said. Jada stood near her window that night, watching the streetlight flicker on. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt something deeper, free, the kind of freedom that comes only after truth is finally spoken and heard. 2 days after the broadcast, Ms. Holloway released a public statement. It was short, typed in a plain font and signed by hand. "I made a grave mistake in judgment. What I did was inexcusable. I offer my sincerest apology to Jada Williams, her family, and the entire student body. I am stepping away from my teaching position permanently." But few believed it came from the heart. News outlets picked apart the language. Critics noted the lack of direct ownership. "She doesn't say she was wrong, only that people were hurt," one commentator remarked. The district confirmed her resignation. Jefferson High quickly scrubbed her name from the faculty page. Students whispered that she had left town entirely. In contrast, Jada was everywhere, quietly, gracefully. She declined most interview requests, choosing instead to participate in a local mentorship program for middle school girls. She wasn't chasing fame, she was becoming a foundation for others to rise. A teacher at a nearby school organized a Justice Through Courage assembly where students recited excerpts from Jada's speech. Another school renamed their science lab in her honor. Emails flooded in from educators who had used the incident as a teaching moment on race, respect, and resilience. But the most unexpected gesture came in a brown envelope mailed anonymously to Jada's house. Inside were the broken pieces of the Crystal Award, carefully collected, each shard wrapped in tissue, along with a single note. "I was wrong. I hope someday you forgive me. There was no name." Jada held the largest shard up to the light. Despite its break, it still caught the sun beautifully. Sometimes broken things still reflect light, just in different directions. At the National Education Summit in Washington, D.C., the room was filled with scholars, policymakers, and educators. When the announcer introduced Jada Williams as the keynote speaker, the crowd stood in applause before she even reached the podium. Wearing a simple black dress and flats, she looked out at hundreds of faces, most older, most powerful. And yet, the room felt quiet and safe. It was her moment. She began with a sentence that hushed the room. "I wasn't supposed to be here, not in their eyes." She spoke not with bitterness, but with clarity. She shared how brilliance often gets buried under bias, how recognition isn't always granted but must be claimed, and how silence, when rooted in dignity, can shake the world. She told them, "The moment my award shattered, something else broke too. The lie that we must smile quietly through injustice, that we must wait our turn, that we must be grateful to be seen." The applause that followed was thunderous. An education journalist tweeted, "Jada didn't just speak. She dismantled generations of assumptions in 10 minutes flat." That night, Jada was offered honorary membership in the National Youth Science Council and a spot on the advisory board for student equity programs. She didn't just accept those honors. She made a promise: "Every door I walk through, I'll leave open behind me." Back in her hotel room, she placed the crystal shard she'd brought with her from home on the nightstand, not as a reminder of pain, but of what survived it. Jada's speech lit the spark that became a national movement. Schools across the country held assemblies to talk about racial bias in education. Students who had once stayed silent began sharing their own stories. A new non-profit was launched, Shatter the Silence, with Jada as honorary founder. Its mission was clear: give overlooked students platforms to share their voices, fund their dreams, and protect their dignity. College campuses played clips of her story in classrooms. High school debate teams cited her in arguments about equity. A famous poet even wrote a piece titled, "She didn't raise her voice, she raised a nation." But even as her name became a symbol, Jada stayed grounded. She kept tutoring younger students after school. She walked her dog every morning with her mom. She still sat at her small desk to finish college essays like every other senior. Reporters kept asking her, "How did you stay so calm on stage?" She'd always smile and answer the same way, "Because I knew I didn't do anything wrong." At Jefferson High, the next award ceremony was handled differently. A new teacher stood at the podium. Before presenting the top award, she paused and acknowledged the past. "This year, we give this award with pride and with care, because every student deserves to feel seen." The crowd clapped, but no one clapped harder than the girl sitting in the front row. Her name wasn't Jada, but because of Jada, she believed she belonged. Months later, as Jada prepared for her graduation, a quiet email arrived. The sender was anonymous. But the message was clear: "Can we meet? I don't expect forgiveness, but I owe you the truth." She knew who it was. She thought hard about it. At first, she was tempted to ignore it. But then she remembered what Dr. Langston had said. Sometimes growth only happens when someone sees the damage they've caused. So she agreed. They met at a quiet local park. Miss Holloway looked different, tired, older, less certain. She held nothing but a small journal and her trembling hands. "I was wrong," she said, voice soft. "Not just about you, about everything. I thought excellence looked a certain way, but it was always you." Jada didn't respond right away. Miss Holloway opened the journal. Inside were pages of reflection, quotes, clippings, even student stories she had ignored for years. "I've applied to volunteer at an equity center. They're letting me listen. That's all I'm asking to do now. Listen." Jada finally spoke. "I don't hate you, but I'm not your healer either. What I do hope is that you meant this." She stood to leave. Before she walked away, Miss Holloway asked, "Why did you agree to meet?" Jada turned and smiled softly. "Because people gave me a chance to be heard. It's only fair I learn to do the same." Graduation at Jefferson High was packed. Banners waved. Parents cried, but the loudest cheers came when Jada Williams stepped onto the stage as valedictorian. She didn't mention the award, or the broken glass, or Miss Holloway. She simply said, "They tried to define me by what they gave, or took, but I defined myself by what I chose to build." Thunderous applause. Her classmates stood for a standing ovation. When she returned to her seat, her mother squeezed her hand. "I told you. Nothing broken can stop you." A few seats down, Claire Bennett clapped the hardest. She had learned too, changed, grown. And outside, little girls watched the ceremony live on screen, dreaming bigger than ever before. Years later, a plaque was added to the Jefferson High auditorium wall. It read, "In honor of Jada Williams, who reminded us that silence is not weakness but strength when rooted in truth." Jada, now a young scientist and educator, visited her old school quietly. No cameras, just memory. She walked past her old locker, past the library, and into the auditorium where it all began. The stage looked smaller now, but the echo of that day still lived in the walls. She stood where she once held a broken piece of glass, and smiled, because now she had become the mirror. One that didn't break, one that helped others see themselves clearly.